Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg-Shaped. Today I'm joined by somebody who, believe it or not, I taught at school many moons ago, and I've watched his journey from afar. We've bumped into each other a few times and we keep in touch, and I was absolutely delighted when he said yes to come and speak to me on the podcast. He's from that town of Hawick that has brought us so much for rugby, and he's now back there putting back in to something that he got so many rewards from. I'm really excited to speak to him. I've known his old man for a long time. He was a referee that I had a lot of respect for, and still he does me some favours that we might get into when we talk. You might know his brother, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about him and his journey, and I'm delighted that Graham Hogg has chosen to join us. Hello there.
Good morning, Bruce. How are we?
Yeah, very good. Great to see you. And you're back in the grey old tuna Hawick.
Yeah, I'm back. So, yeah, you're joining me from the kitchen. We've just literally moved into a new house in Hawick over the last couple of months. So, yeah, we've been back. We've been back here 3-4 months now, and yeah, loving it. Fresh air, so much better down here.
I do, Hawick and all that jazz. Yeah.
So,
what's it like being back? Are you excited by the new challenge? Tell us about your job.
Yeah, absolutely loving it, Bruce. Basically, the opportunity came up a few months ago to get back into development, to get back into rugby development with the Hawick club. And I didn't need to think about it for too long, to be fair. It's always a job that I've really looked and wanted to do. I've done development roles elsewhere, without any disrespect to the other clubs and places I've been throughout the country. This was the one that I really wanted, because obviously it's the one that I grew up with. Hawick's, obviously, you don't need to go into the history of the rugby that's in the town, but I think probably for too long we've relied on that history, and now it was time for me to bring in some new ideas and change it up and make sure we can get back to the top of the game in Scottish rugby.
So the Hawick club, you're saying we didn't get into the history, but you were ball boy, you played all the way through, the age groups at Hawick and at the school. Who did you look at and think, I can't wait to be like them?
It's quite a few back in the day, Bruce, wasn't it? We were quite lucky even before sort of ball boying days when my old man, when Dad was refereeing, he used to go down quite a lot, and he even did some training. We used to jump in and do some training and stuff there as well. You look at guys like Roddy Deans was somebody I always looked up to, although a completely different position, just his sort of work ethic and what he'd done round about the town, and obviously with this job role as well, was someone I looked up to. Sort of back-wise, you obviously look at Nicky Walker. Yeah, you had your Stephen Cranstons, probably guys who are not as well known sort of throughout Scottish rugby now, but Stephen Cranston was somebody who had a big impact, both when he played for me and he done a little bit of coaching for a year or two as well, who was real good to me.
Yeah, and you're standing on the shoulders of a lot of great men. Your old man was somebody I loved when Hoggy was refereeing, because he had a little bit of crack. He would tell me to shut up quite a lot, but he was always one of those approachable guys. What was it like having a dad that was a referee?
Yeah, to be fair, Bruce, it probably helped myself and Stuart more than we probably let on. Every weekend, sometimes during the week, we would get bundled into the car at 8-9 o'clock in the morning and be away to, I remember, Dundee, Aberdeen, some places in the early days that I never even knew they played rugby in these towns and stuff like that. And yeah, it was just, we were always immersed in it. We'd always, even before sort of we were both professional players, we were watching game after game of rugby because he was sort of at the peak of his career then and obviously doing a lot. So between that and probably taking a rugby ball from every single club that is in Scottish rugby, it had a big influence, to be fair. Yeah, my mum when we used to come back, obviously covered in mud and everything, we'd have another ball with the initials of the town that it was on. So yeah, the garden at Hernhill Bank was full of a lot of rugby balls over those years.
And growing up on a touchline, like it's where you kick off both feet. It's where you pass and you tackle. And did you realise that was helping you become the player you did?
Probably you just having fun back then, Bruce, weren't we? That was some of the best memories, and it's something I try and relay back to the kids now. That yeah, we're working on it. We're working on skills. Your bad hand, your bad foot. I just want boys to go out there and have fun. Boys and girls, sorry, to go out there and have fun and enjoy playing. Now, some of my best games at Mansfield have been played on the hill. Some of the times that I was back there, they're some of my best ones. And as I say, that's something when I've came into the new role is really about relaying that back, that we are. It's a privilege to play rugby. It's a privilege to play rugby in the town of Hawick, and I want everybody to make sure they enjoy that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. The development role you're in, you have to organise things, and you spend time in admin, and you're trying to upskill coaches, and there's a huge amount to the role. But there you've just described the learning that can happen without Graham Hogg standing over with a whistle and a session plan. How are you finding encouraging kids to just play for the sake of playing?
I think when we came in, I came in with that attitude straight away. We came off the back of the pandemic, so it was a completely fresh start. It wasn't obviously Rocky Johnston, who held the job before, had done it for a long time and done a great job. But it was like obviously a brand new slate, not just with me coming in, but the fact that pandemic was there as well. So the sessions that we done when we first got them back was just about fun and enjoyment. There was no, this is how we pass off your bad hand. It was just games. And that's something that through my coaching, I want to progress more with in terms of the fun through playing games and little things like that. And it obviously worked because with some age groups would maybe have 12, 13, 14 sort of boys, just because people were obviously a little bit sceptical of getting back into it. And now we're up over 20 odd for every age group that we've got, and sometimes above. We're talking 30 odd. So what we're doing is obviously working. It's just about having smiles on faces, getting boys and everybody, coaches enjoying it. And that's the thing. And then obviously if we get them enjoying it, we get them on side, then we can start working on the little bits to their trade to make them that better rugby player.
When you grew up in Hawick, a lot of what you did was by torchlight and headlamps of cars. You've now got a fabulous facility there, floodlights, the AstroTurf surface. And kids probably need that now because there's more competition for their time and their attention. When you grew up, you would have probably played in the park or in the street with, you've got a younger brother, there would have been older kids there would have been your mates. Are you finding the kids are still playing away from when they're under your nose?
I think before I came into the role, and you'll have heard that everybody will have heard that kids are, all they do now is they're on their PlayStations or whatever, their laptops or whatever. But the thing that I've noticed, especially being back here driving about, is you still get all the groups of kids who the boy at the back will be bouncing a rugby ball, or you'll be driving past the park and a high ball will go up, and it is there. I think we just need to, as I say, if we're doing our job on task and time on task with when we have them, if we're relaying the good news stories and get everybody enjoying it, then it's going to be infectious. They're going to want to go out and play with their mates, and I have seen that. It's a big thing. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds over the next couple of weeks, pandemic wise and such like. But we've made sure that every single player who plays rugby within the town's got a rugby ball, and we've just made sure. I know that sounds like a little thing, but we've made sure that every single person's going to have a ball. And we are going to be doing stuff with them, even if we can't take sessions. We're going to be doing stuff with them to make sure they've still got that opportunity to play the game that they've obviously started to love again over the last few months. Absolutely
class. Love that, Hoggy. Absolutely love that. That is so good to hear. So refreshing to hear. You're sort of starting to build the numbers. Are you having a look over the fence at Mansfield at what the senior boys are doing?
Yeah, I'm quite lucky. I've obviously got a good relationship with Matty Douglas, Mantle Landel, so I've actually been going in there most weeks on a Thursday night and just doing some back stuff with Matty as well, just to sort of help out, which has been brilliant. And obviously that's helped within the town this year as well. The good news stories that are coming out of Mansfield are back to winning ways, and it's not just necessarily winning at Mansfield. It's the way that the boys are playing. It's the way that obviously you've been around long enough, Bruce, to know that especially a Mansfield Park crowd, they can get on your back at some points, but they'll definitely follow you to the hilt when they can see that there's a team really trying and really working hard. And we've got a group of coaches and a group of boys just now who are really doing that. And as I say, it's making my job in development that little bit easier as well when there's good stuff coming out down Mansfield Road every single week just now.
It's good to see some smiles on faces. Even Pundy Thorburn looks happy, which is a challenge. When you're planning ahead, are you looking at kids and thinking this one's pretty special? Have you got some kids around that you're thinking they've got a really bright future?
Yeah, we have. We've certainly got different boys at different age groups who are at different stages in their career that some of them we think, yeah, I want to keep a hold of you for the next few years and see we can go. But probably on past experience as well, Bruce, that don't want to put too much pressure on these boys too early. I think that's probably something that's came out the last few years, that your top players are maybe 15, 16, 17-year-old. By the time they're 22, 23, they're a little bit tired of the game. So we just want them, again, I'm going to keep going back to it and always will, that we enjoy it first. We make sure we're putting the skills into them. They're working hard. We know exactly where they're going, but we don't lose that element of just letting them be and letting them have fun. And then what happens the further we go down the line. As I say, I was probably one of those boys. I was lucky enough at the time to obviously, I was 16 when I played my first game for Hawick. Now, obviously, that wouldn't be allowed to happen now. But yeah, the longer you sort of go in early 20s, I was pretty fatigued looking back on it now. And that I probably fell off rugby a little bit. And I don't want that to happen to some of the kids that we've got coming through just now.
Yeah, I could sense a bit of experience coming through there. So, looking back at, I think I first met you when you would have been about 14, maybe even younger, and you were part of this little purple patch of players that you could just see if they could move through as a group. And the places we are from in the borders, you don't have a massive pool of players, so you want to see these teams progress, and you're thinking, right, in 5 years' time, we'll have all the best of them, and then those that are 2 years older. No, that group of players, a lot of them played for Hawick, and some went on and, like yourself, went away and did other things in the game away from Mansfield. When you look back at that, can you see lessons to learn for the role you're in now?
Massively, and that you're probably right. I have obviously spoke to a lot of people who have came with the same sort of thought process, but yeah, you always go on personal experience, don't you? And we did have a group growing up that, yeah, we won everything. We did win everything, and as I say, I played my first game for Hawick when I was 16. Probably had 2 years left at semi-junior rugby. Again, the experience stuff for that is I would probably have stayed and enjoyed my rugby for those 2 years more. And then obviously a lot of the boys who were my age group left a year early as well. So they sort of came the year after me. But that's when we really started to struggle at Mansfield. I think we got relegated a couple of seasons after, a very good group at youth rugby, but we just couldn't take that through to obviously the struggles that you get in obviously full men's rugby at Premier 1 at the time. So yeah, there is massive lessons, and as I say, it's something that I want to make sure doesn't happen again. And obviously the club and the junior clubs round about Hawick just now, we're all working together to make sure that we do the best for Hawick rugby, the best for everybody, whether it's a youth, whether it's a Lindeen. Hopefully we'll have Hawick Harlequins back for the start of next season, which is a big thing. The Harlequins It was the first junior team I played for. And I've had some good times at Baker Street. So we certainly want to make sure that they come back for next season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had some good times at Baker Street as well. I love Hawick rugby. I love, it's sad that when you were growing up, I think, and when I was growing up, a wee bit longer in the tooth than you, the trades, the YM, the Lindeen, the Quins, they all contributed to the goodness that was at the top at Hawick rugby, and lots of good people involved. How important is it? You're saying you're all now working together. How important is your role in that, getting everybody's noses pointing in the same direction?
Yeah, I think this has probably been brought in more into my role since I've started over than what's happened in the past, because the clubs in the town, especially obviously Hawick, who I'm employed by, know how important it is to get that retention with boys and everybody going in the right direction. So already, as soon as I came in, I was looking at boys who would be making that step up to senior rugby next year. Now we can look at it from two sides. We've got maybe 17, 18 boys who are moving from youth rugby up into senior rugby next year. And it's really important that we keep the majority of those boys playing, whether it is just for social rugby at the Lindeen or the Quins, or whether some of these boys want to go into bigger things at Mansfield. We need them all. We need all players, as we've already spoken about. So, yeah, it is a really important part of the role now, and something that it's quite exciting, because it probably hasn't really happened in Hawick rugby before, in terms of making sure that we all go in the same direction. So the challenges are there, but yeah, it'll be good. Looking forward to it.
It's good for the town, isn't it? Having people engaged and, feeling a sense of belonging. There's, the world's changed, and Hawick as a town has changed. Have you found it difficult to engage with kids or people coming into town who are not maybe from Hawick and able to say, their father played and, refereed and their mum was involved? Have you found that challenging?
Honestly, Bruce, no. I haven't really found it bad, because we started off on a real good footing, as I say, just with that clean slate and just getting the good news stories out there. Social media, obviously these days, it's got a massive part to play in that. We started up the Futures Green pages on Twitter and on Instagram, and yeah, I think our following and stuff doubled on that, just by getting as much stuff out there as we could, as much good news stories as we could. And as I say, we're speaking about being long in the tooth. I kind of feel like that for social media now, but it certainly works. And we get a lot of good feedback about that from parents and such like as well. So it certainly helps. So yeah, no, it's the feedback from everywhere so far has been really good. It's just about sustaining that and making sure we keep getting better over the next few years.
Yeah, brilliant. Having that pride and that sense of belonging, to me, is so important in a place like Hawick. Now you've got, there's people who are within touching distance. One of the great things about towns that have rugby, you can walk along the street and bump into Graham Hogg. You can also walk along the street and bump into Jim Rennick, who some of your kids might not know who he is, but British Lion, best player in the world at his time at number 13. Nicky Walker's around, Scotty McLeod's around. There are people who have done and are still doing great things in the game, and they're just normal folk who are engaged in the town. You've then got Darcy Graham and your brother, who are, at the peak of their powers in the professional game at the moment. How has Lisa Thompson contributed to that? The town's now got a really strong female role model, an Olympian. How have you seen the growth in the girls' game?
Yeah, I would say Lisa and Lana Skeldon, obviously, as well, doing great things for Scotland. They make my job in terms of going into the schools, especially the girls' side of things, a lot easier as well. Now, how many times can we say at this current time we've got 5 rugby playing at the top level, 5 rugby internationals, 2 girls, and obviously Lisa being the Olympian? It's something that that I've been really keen to start up since I've got into Hawick. We've never had, or for a number of years, I think my mum was one of the last ones to actually play in a Hawick team. We haven't really had a female side of things, and I think for a club or a town our size not to have that is a little bit criminal, if I'm perfectly honest. So we've been working pretty hard with the school over the last few months. I've managed to get in and take the girls' stuff, sort of curriculum time within school, and actually towards the end of January we're starting up an S1, S2 team because we have had that outpouring of girls wanting to be involved, and Lisa and Lana have been obviously paramount to that. They can see, again, going back to the social media side of things, they can see these girls playing at the top of their game, and they want a piece of that as well.
Brilliant. So good. And it's just good for the town. Now you've been away, you've wandered, and you've come back. What have you seen that you thought we need some of that in Hawick?
Yeah, when we had the conversation before we came on air, I've been to quite a few clubs, haven't I? I've been lucky enough, obviously, being out with Scotland. I loved my time in Italy. The close-knit sort of team culture and stuff that's in Italy, in terms, obviously, they're real passionate people, the Italians, and that was something that I really wanted to bring back in terms of how connected they were from under fives rugby all the way up to the senior rugby. Everybody knew everybody, and I know sometimes that's not a great thing, but everybody just had that close-knit community, and that was something that I really wanted to bring back, to then going in and working at a sort of a franchise in London with G-Force, and obviously having some really good coaches down there. That sort of brought the technical side of things in that I really want to work on. If you had any of the players who are sort of working under me just now, that I'm quite a stickler for a skill set. I love them being able to catch and pass, and as I say, all through games, and making sure you have fun. But there's a time where, I really want to make sure that player skill sets are the top as they can be. And that's something that I learned from obviously being in London with that side of things. So I'm pretty sure I could pick out good points and bad points from every club that I've been at. But those are the ones that really stick out.
How does a boy for Hawick end up playing rugby in Italy?
No idea, mate. No idea. Yeah, it was quite. I'd finished playing. I think I'd finished sort of playing full time 2012 in Scotland. With the sort of my contract was up here, and I was actually out in Australia 2013 watching Stuart with the Lions, and a family friend sort of got in touch asking if I knew anybody who would be interested in a contract in Italy. So it didn't take me too long to ask what position they'd be looking for. And they weren't sure, but I was that position anyway, so I was going.
Number 8.
Yeah, I would have played anywhere out there, and it was, it was probably what I needed at the time. I think we're going to go into obviously the mental health stuff later on, but it was something that massively helped me in terms of being a more rounded person. I think leading up to that time, all I knew was rugby. That's all I knew, and I think I needed to get out there and just get life experience, which definitely helped. But yeah, it was a great time out there. Absolutely loved it.
So all work and no play, all rugby and nothing else. There are people who feel like that's the only. I've got to concentrate on that. I have to do that to achieve. Again, back to your experience. Are you now looking at what you've gone through, and you're able to see maybe a broader picture?
Absolutely. We hear this phrase now a lot, cross sports. And I'm quite big on that. A lot of people sort of back in the day, I do sound old when I say that, don't I? Back in the day, basically, you would have to choose. It was either rugby or your football or your golf or tennis or whatever it is. Whereas now, I try and get kids to play as many sports as we can. We can't cradle them. We can't keep them. If kids want to go play other sports, they're going to go play other sports. But that can help us. some of our best players just now have had a sort of a boxing background or a tennis background, and as I say, I'm all for that. I want them to go out and experience as many opportunities as they can, to make sure when they do, if we are getting if the product that we are giving them at the rugby club is good enough, they'll come back, and then they'll be a better person for it because they'll have had these different experiences elsewhere.
So when you say product, you've mentioned things like you want them to catch and pass, and you want them to have a skill set, and you want them to have fun. What other skills, sometimes called life skills, which I'm never a big fan of, but let's give it that label just now. What sort of life skills are you able to work on with these kids from the primary school level all the way through to the kids you're looking at transitioning into senior rugby? What sort of life skills are you focusing on, or are you aware of?
Yeah, as you say, the life skill phrase sort of comes under the same word I'm going to use here in terms of culture. Culture is a big one that sort of goes along with that, and it's sort of bringing or enhancing the work that the parents do for the kids in terms of your big ones, your respect, your timekeeping, your everything that goes along with that, making sure that just little things after the game, that the sheds are clean, making sure that if we speak to a referee, it's yes or no, sir. It's just little things to make sure that when they're growing up and when we're going through the skills that we're learning on the field, they're taken back into school, they're taken back into their groups, just to make the community a better place. Now, obviously, I've not been in the job a massive amount of time, but I think the boys will know that or they'll tell you that there's two things I always say. The first thing is at the end, whenever I talk to them, what are the two things I'm looking for? The big one is smiles on faces, and the second one is make sure we enjoy it and we respect each other. So that they are, as I say, two things that are massively important. So it's just, as I say, going back to the stuff, it's making them all round, making them just be better people for what we want. So whether they go into business, whether they stick in with rugby, whether they do whatever, they've got that stuff ready for them at whatever their life goes next.
And your pathway, the game was kind of changing, I suppose. And when you were leaving school, you knew that professional rugby was a thing you could do. It wasn't the professional rugby we've got now, but it was an option as a job. And you ended up getting into the sevens circuit and being part of that. What was that like? Because to me, you're talking about culture and environment and broadening your horizons, but sometimes when I speak to sevens players, they went from airport to hotel to training field to hotel to fixture to a beer after the sevens and then back on the plane again. Were you able to enjoy the experience?
I think everybody you speak to will say they would enjoy it, but some of what you've said there is basically fact. Obviously, you were in a professional environment, you were there to do a job. You would literally go away for maybe 2.5 weeks at a time. You'd spend a week in one place, and you'd maybe get one day off during the week. Now, obviously, when he went, I was very fortunate. My first tournament was Hong Kong. Now, as a kid growing up loving rugby, if you can't enjoy running out there for the first time, then you're in the wrong job. You're most definitely in the wrong job. So, yeah, there were tough times. As I say, you could be in a hotel room on Hawick High Street, or you could be in Johannesburg. It's exactly the same in a hotel room. But yeah, there was times where he massively enjoyed it. And as I say, getting out there and playing in front of those crowds, and it was definitely something that I absolutely loved.
Come on in. What was it like? 36,000 folk at Hong Kong Stadium playing in front of the South Stand. And you boys used to love warming up in front of the South Stand.
Yeah, that's probably an experience I will never forget. That is probably the highlight. Now, for probably my first season, when I was on the sevens circuit, I was a professional water carrier. But even then, for the first season, I just absolutely loved it. Like, in terms of trying to explain what that's like, warming up in front of that, now I can imagine warming up at Murrayfield in front of 60,000 outstanding, but in front of however many thousand in the South Stand when the beers have been flowing for the last 24, 48 hours. It's something incredible. Sometimes I was unsure whether I wanted to keep warming up or I wanted to dive in between them and just get involved in it. But it was excellent, and something that I think anybody you speak to, if they've been fortunate enough to play in that environment, will absolutely love it.
When you were growing up, you were involved in Scottish age group teams, so you met players from, not just around Scotland, but exiles and, boys that were coming up and had a Scottish granny, all those things. But when you go on a sevens trip, you're with boys 24/7, and it's a really small group. Who did you develop strong relationships with?
Quite a few boys, obviously. We were lucky enough. We had a decent age group squad as it was. So in that age group, you had guys like Richie Vernon, you had guys like Andrew Eason, Roddy Grant, a boy who had spent a lot of time with, obviously, in the Hawick days, with Rory Hutton as well. We were lucky enough to go on quite a few tournaments together. So, no, you do get guys like that where you form sort of, obviously, good relationships with. Roddy, obviously, being from Gala.
Kind of
from Gala. Yeah, boys like that. And then he obviously looked at the older guys who'd been been about a lot longer. Your Colin Gregors, your Mikey Adamsons, who's obviously went on to do the refereeing side of things. They were guys who, when you were coming into that environment, really looked after you as well. So, really fun memories of the majority of the time on the Sevens circuit.
I've spoken to a lot of people involved or who have been involved in sevens, and how different that environment is to 15s. It's basic things like there's fewer of you, but you're never really playing at home, so you never get to just turn up and then leave again. Whether you win or you lose, you've got to go back to the same hotel with the winners and the other losers and the coaches, so you can develop quite different relationships. What did you take from your relationship with the sevens coaches that's helped you in your future?
I think, in terms of what you're saying, just being able to adapt to that, basically that 24-hour environment, as you mentioned, and being able to deal with. You think sometimes you'll have worked with them as well, and you'll have worked with coaches for maybe an hour or two and thinking, right, that's enough. I've had enough with them. But it's being able to adapt and being able to understand people, and that everybody's different, in terms of that environment where you're so close knit and you can't escape anywhere. You can't go anywhere. I remember some of the hotels it would be in. I think in George in South Africa was one of the big ones. Now, if you turned right out the hotel, you were basically in the jungle somewhere, so you couldn't go anywhere. So it was being able to just sort of find out, not necessarily rugby skills stuff, because you were finding that out anyways because you were in that environment, but finding out how people skills and how to deal with different people. You had obviously the guys who just want to go away and sort of be on their own. You had other guys who needed somebody with them a lot of the time. So it was just being able to adapt and know, obviously, everybody's sort of personal skills and what they're looking for.
I'm interested in this, but we are going to talk about mental health. But I know you, but I don't know you that well. I first met you as a kid, and the future very, very bright, and you went on to do some really good things. When I met you further on in life, and I don't know if this is hindsight, but there were times where I spoke to you where I didn't think you were maybe happy or maybe satisfied is a better word for it. It looked like you were still, and you were still striving for, whether it would be that Scotland cap or that recognition. When did you feel your mental health journey began?
I think probably during the sevens, Bruce, if we're completely honest. I know I've spoke quite a lot about it, but there were some times towards the latter part of my sevens career where I would be playing in front of that however many thousand people, and I'd never felt so alone. It was when I probably started to think there's something not right here. But you're talking, if we're looking, as I say, mentioning in hindsight, you're talking 12, 13 years ago now. Mental health never really existed then. To say it didn't exist is obviously not the right terminology, but it wasn't as out there. It wasn't as obviously as big as what it is now. So yeah, I think that was a starting point, and then obviously I came back. And then I basically done a double ACL injury. I'd done an ACL playing against Harriet for Hawick, which kept me out for a number of months, and then I basically done it halfway through. I'd done it again, so that kept me out of the game for a long time. But instead of striving to get back and really looking to play, there was just a massive fear then that I wasn't going to be the same player as I was, or there was stuff there, and I'd done probably everything that he could to hamper my, what's the word I'm looking for, to hamper the sort of my way in getting back into the game in terms of my rehab and stuff like that. On the outside, it looked like I was doing everything to get back, but yeah, there was stuff behind closed doors that I probably got back a lot quicker if I wasn't struggling sort of mentally then.
And were you confused with those feelings?
Massively. Yeah, as you say, massively. I'd be sort of early 20s, never had any setbacks, never really had any massive issues in the game or in life. So when this came along, and obviously kept it to myself for a long time, those thoughts were going through your head 24/7, and some days you'd be absolutely elated because you felt normal, and then other days you'd obviously feel the worst. So it was massively confusing and a massively difficult time for everybody, obviously for myself, and obviously as things came out sort of years down the line, it obviously was really difficult on the family and stuff as well. So yeah.
Did you have a game face? Did you have a game face for those days that you were struggling with?
I wouldn't really say, Bruce, to be honest with you, because my face doesn't really hide stuff. Now, looking back now, and obviously speaking to close friends and stuff, when actually, again, the word hindsight, it was pretty obvious there was issues there. But yeah, I wasn't too great at hiding how I was feeling. But again, nobody put two and two together and got the mental health side of things. So only obviously, again, further down the line where you go and seek help and you actually open up and speak to somebody that you start putting the sort of jigsaw in place and saying, obviously, that massively adds up.
What did you need? Because you know, social media, it can be great, and social media has given me a lot, and I can take a lot from it, but I can also see the challenges with it. So people can post things like, you know, it's okay to talk, and you know, if there's that teammate that is struggling, you know, make sure you speak to them. What do you think you would have needed at that point? Can you look back and say, if he'd asked me, or if I'd had that moment alone with that person, I could have gone for it?
No, I think there was just such a stigma around mental health back then that I didn't want people to know, because I didn't want it to hamper where I was going. There was a saying between the sort of coaches, especially in the Seven Circuit, that we would have obviously meetings, one-to-one meetings with the coaches, and I was always, there was no issues first week. I was fine first week. Second week, everything came tumbling down. Now, when I've had conversations with these coaches since then, how did we not notice that? Like, how it wasn't just like one tournament or the next tournament. It was every single time we went away. I was brand new first week, and then second week just wasn't coping. But again, obviously, then you go to the injury side of things. I just didn't want it to hamper. I'd spent a year and a half or whatever it was out the game. I didn't want to turn around and say to somebody that I was mentally ill or mentally struggling, because I thought that was just going to be a tick against my name. So instead of just nipping it in the bud and going speaking to someone and getting it sorted, it rolled and rolled and rolled and just made it a whole load worse than what it was in the beginning.
I absolutely love your honesty, Hoggy. This is really, I feel really privileged that you're speaking to me about it. What then do you look back on? Because some of what you've mentioned there is you were involved in professional sport and there are challenges there. What do you look at now and think it's better?
I think just the fact that it's out there in the public eye a lot more now in terms of the stigma around mental health. Now there's a lot of people out there who, not just myself, there's a lot that are bigger and better than me that have came out and said, look, we struggled with this, something needs to be done. And a lot of people, especially within Scottish Rugby, there's a lot of people there now to help. And the stigma, although there is still a massive stigma about it, a lot of people know that they need to speak to someone now. And that is the big thing, that they don't need to keep it into themselves because they're embarrassed by it. They know if they're unfortunate enough to go through some circumstances, that there is a pathway for them to go and speak to people. Now, could that pathway be better? I think we could all say everything could be better, but in terms of in Scottish Rugby, we're definitely going in the right place to make sure that not just like our top professionals, anybody that's playing club second rugby at any club in Scotland, if somebody's going through those issues, there is a lot of people out there who have been there and who are looking to help. And I'm certainly one of them. As you say, we're opening up about the story and stuff. There'll be, most weeks I'll have a conversation with this about somebody, and as I say, if it just helps that one person, then we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it's good to hear you speaking positively about it. That it's not necessarily reassuring, but it's good to hear that you feel things are improving. I got a message for somebody last week just asking if they could have a chat, and again, I've said it to you. I feel privileged you're talking to me. I felt really honoured that they kind of chose me to, and we went and had a coffee. Obviously, I had a sausage, bacon, and black pudding roll as well with my coffee, but it was, I felt really honoured to hopefully be part of that. There are still a number of people who are not able to. Where can you see that? It's good when people do feel open, and we can hopefully support them and get them the professional help that they need, but there are still people who are hiding it. But if you did an ACL, you would go to the doc and the physio and you get an operation. With their mental health, it should be the same, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're obviously going back to the 7 days, the 7 days and the days I was full time, that we would have numerous physios, we'd have numerous doctors. But even if I was to come out and say something back then, I'm not sure there would have been the people to deal with that. Now, obviously, these people are in place now, and you're exactly right. Now, sometimes I feel like a little bit of a fraud to turn around and say, you need to open up, you need to speak to people, when I was the one for years and years and years who never opened my mouth. Now, the big thing that there's obviously, you get your mental health, no cliches, but you get your phrases out there in terms of reach out, you need to reach out. But the big thing that I would say to people is, if you see someone who is struggling or you think is struggling, whether you're right or whether you're wrong, reach into those people and just say, look, you might be completely wrong. Now, I would rather be wrong and get the conversation sort of daft manned it than not have that conversation and actually be right. So sort of the stuff that I give out is, if there is anybody at all that you're having those concerns about, whether it's a friend, a teammate, someone within school, anything, is just reach in and ask that question, are you okay? And then ask the question again. There's a big thing in terms of asking twice, because you know what we're like, Bruce, we even said it before, how are you doing, what's new? Nothing. Like, we've not spoke to each other for a few months. You ask again, and then people start to open up a bit more.
Yeah.
As I say, that is the big thing, is just making sure, just being aware of certain signs. Now everything's out there now in terms of obviously triggers and certain things like that. So it's just being able to speak to somebody and not necessarily reach out, but reach into them to really help them out.
I love that, Hoggy. I absolutely love that. I love changing rooms. It's the bit I miss the most. I loved playing the game, but between the whistles, yes, I loved that. But the changing room was a bit of heaven for me. But I can look back now at behaviour, at things people said, things I said, things I did, and I can think there might have been somebody who was hearing that and then couldn't be themselves. Do you feel like changing rooms have changed for the better?
I think they would, Bruce. I think the way the world is now, obviously, the world has changed, and a lot of stuff, like you're alluding to, has been for the better. Now you'll still get your same individuals in a changing room who want to have a laugh, but I think more people are aware. In terms of what we're speaking about here, a lot more people are aware, and they're aware of what they're saying, because it may affect someone completely different. So yeah, they're definitely better, and there's still a way to go with changing rooms in terms of banter and little things like that. But as I say, that there's certain stuff we need to change. There's certain stuff, as I say, that you've alluded to there, that I would never want to change in terms of that. But the stuff, obviously, the mental health side of things, obviously your big stuff is certainly going in the right direction. Especially I can only speak for the changing rooms and stuff that I've been in, and yeah, they're definitely going in the right direction.
You're saying about looking for changes. So there's the physical bit of, a training session where the ball goes down a lot by the same person, or that's probably an easy thing to pick up. But changing rooms where you get to know the person, and it can be quite intimate, quite literally intimate. You're seeing people at their most vulnerable, and that's where you develop the relationships where you can maybe see the little bits. Does the professional game lend itself to that, or do you feel like it's a job? People arrive, they do their work, they go home, they have their other interests. Is there? I'm not quite sure what I'm getting at here. The amateur changing room, you maybe worked with a guy and then went to rugby and you had a beer with him. Is the professional environment able to support the messages we're talking about?
I would say the difference between the professional side of things and obviously the club environment is that there's more time. You're getting more time in that professional environment. You're spending, again, more time with them. Like, you're not just getting changed beside them for 10, 15 minutes before one session. You're maybe getting 3-4 sessions a day that you're doing that. So the big things in terms of the mental health side of things, if you see changes in habits, someone who would maybe sit and have a laugh and do stuff is starting to be more a recluse, or just picking up his bag and going that little bit earlier, or just not being the same. You're getting more time to see those different traits from that person. So I'd say none of them are easy, Bruce. Let's be honest. That it's not easy to pick up that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't say it's any worse in the professional game because of having that little bit added time there for it.
We're not going to stick on this, but there is one thing I do want to ask, and it's something that interests me massively. You've mentioned if you get injured, there's physios, there's doctors as well. When you're at school, there's a guidance teacher. When you're at home, there's your, hopefully, parents or parent or guardian or granny or auntie, whatever it is, that's kind of your emotional, mental guide and support and can see those little triggers. Do we need to have more professionals who are right there at the pitch side, in the changing room, in the team meetings, who can be picking up these behaviours? Do we need to have mental health physios, mental health first aiders who are available more often?
I think we do. Now, maybe not necessarily in every single training session or every single gym session, but I think there needs to be someone within every club environment who is the go-to person if you're struggling. Now, that person, as I say, will be trained up. Stuff that we are doing with Make Minds Move is we're putting stuff out there to make sure we have got mental health sort of first aiders and people trained in the certain clubs that we are working with. So yeah, just having somebody that's on site and exactly who they are does make a massive difference. As I say, do they need to be at absolutely every single thing? I'm not sure we're there yet. But definitely having someone within every single club environment, to me, that's a no-brainer. It is absolutely a no-brainer.
Awesome. Come on in, talk us through the MMM. What work are you doing?
Yeah, so obviously it was 2019 when myself and one of the guys, Adam Clayton, who I played with in London, we sort of came up with the idea. Now, I was obviously coming out the back of getting a fair bit of help for my mental well-being, and I just gave him a call one day because I wanted to do something to give back. Now, again, this is where it comes back to. I'd speak to Adam on the phone before that day every couple of weeks, definitely message most every week. And then actually one of the conversations when we were first starting up is that he'd went through a similar episode. Now, as I say, that me not picking up signs, obviously he stays in Worcester, but we felt like we could do something. Now, what our whole sort of niche with Make Minds Move is to get people out there and get people active and get people speaking about their stuff. Now, the speaking bit doesn't come straight away, but if we can get people out a rut by getting out on their bike or getting out a run and just having that person to speak with, then obviously that's us doing our job. So as I say, we're not a fully fledged charity as of yet. We're still a movement, and that's what we're working towards. And we're raising money. A year past sort of June, we done the 24 hours on a bike in our gardens, which was pretty difficult. To say the least, but it wasn't necessarily the 24 hours on the bike. It was the sort of the publicity and stuff. We got that from some of the professionals from football, with Chris Boyd to obviously guys at the top of their game like Finn Russell coming on and speaking about the mental health and how important that is. So as I say, it was more that with the webinar and little things that we done that we raised a fair bit of money for the Injured Players Foundation at Murrayfield, and from the English side of things, Restart Rugby. So obviously pandemic-wise, it slowed everything down. But I was fortunate enough even just a couple of days ago to have a conversation back where it all begun for me back in the clubhouse at Mansfield. Speaking in front of the Hawick boys, so it was good to get back out there and start getting that message back out that there is people there willing to help.
It was brilliant. The webinar was great. I remember watching your cycle, you had Dafty, and then I saw that you'd been speaking at Mansfield, which is fantastic. I was given a really good bit of advice for an older teacher, a more experienced teacher than me, that said, when you're having a chat to a kid, go for a walk so that you're side by side rather than this not confrontation, but face to face. Go for a walk, and talk side by side. And then I was talking to somebody else who was on about when you're leaving a game and you've got the parent in the car who's going over it all, and whereas actually it can be a really powerful thing because you're sitting by side, you can't go anywhere else, but you didn't have to have direct eye contact. And I was thinking back to all those car journeys with my mum and my dad who run me all over for various different sports, and the amount of conversations that we had that I think were beneficial for my mental and emotional health, but you were forced to have time together. And time's the crucial element here, isn't it? It's people taking time.
Absolutely. I remember those car journeys well. Obviously in the front with my old man, but I had a little hyperactive little brother who'd be jumping about in the back that I wouldn't get much time to have the conversation. So not much has changed to that, to be fair. But yeah, no, and that's the big thing in terms of, again, going back to the new role. It's us educating parents as well to have those conversations. We can put this stuff out to the kids as much as we want, but the main one is obviously getting out to parents how important that time is. Now, we've all have had it probably back in the past where you've missed a tackle or you've done something wrong and you knew about it, but it's being able to still have those conversations, but just do them obviously more subtly to make sure that we're still getting that positive message out there to make sure everybody's in a good place, or is in as good a place as they can be.
Okay, I absolutely love it. What does the future hold for you then, in terms of the movement possibly becoming a charity, the role you're in, back in Hawick. What does the future hold for Graham Hogg?
Yeah, the future just now, Bruce, first and foremost, is I know how to live in the moment now. And I know that sounds as cheesy as it does sound, but content's not the word I would use, but I'm happy with where I am. I know we've got a plan in place for the next sort of 3-4 years with this type of role. I've still got a massive fire and a massive drive again to do something in the game. Now, obviously, that's going to be through coaching in some capacity now. So I'm going to make sure over the next few years that I do all I can to upskill and keep learning as much as I can to get through that and do that. And it's just about enjoying life again. As I say, I'm back. I've got a good family around about me. I've got a little 5-year-old girl who keeps me on my toes, and her smile helps every single day. So it's just about enjoying this, but keep going to where ultimately I've always wanted to be, but obviously in a different capacity nowadays. But making sure that I don't let that take over my whole world, and just being clever about that as well. So yeah, the future's good just now.
Oh, good. I'm delighted to hear that. Well, I've taken up a huge amount of your time. We've gone way over what I said, but I've loved chatting to you. It's been absolutely brilliant. I'm looking forward to coming down to Hawick and catching up with you properly. But let's wrap this up, Hoggy. For you, finish off the sentence for me. Happiness is
Hawick shaped.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I've got my tubs of Hawick balls are needing refilled up here. I'm needing to get down and get one of the big cartons, I think, to get my Hawick balls filled up.
We'll let you in for a couple of hours to get that done, and then you'll be back out.
Hoggy, absolutely brilliant to see you. All the best, and I can't wait to catch up with you and keep up the good work. It's great to see you.
Good man. Thank you very much, Bruce. Cheers.
Cheers, my man.
Cheers.
Absolutely love it. He's come a long way, and it's good to hear that he's happy in the moment, but it sounds like there's some big plans for the future. If you've enjoyed it, please have a look at Apple, Spotify, and Acast for the pods. You can watch us on Facebook and on YouTube. If you've enjoyed it, leave us a review, tell your friends, and get involved. Go back and have a look at the back catalogue. There's heaps there, and I'm really excited for the future. We've got some big pods coming up. And brilliant to speak to Graham Hogg. His father is a great man who did me a really good favour, and his wee brother's not a bad rugby player either. My name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast, and my happiness is egg-shaped. I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. But in the meantime, please stay safe.